Refuge Nation. We are here today with Mike Herne. He is a bow hunter, he does gear reviews, and he is active military. He is a very experienced person when it comes to hunting and all things hunting safety. So we brought him on to chat today. We're going to start with chatting about what beginners and what they should be doing, how they should start. I know there's a lot of people out there who are intimidated by hunting, but with all the craziness going on in the world, I think it's a skill that we all should have, and we should know how to do it and do it safely, because there's a lot of things out there that come against us, and there's some scary things out there when it comes to hunting and animals. So Mike, thanks for jumping on with us, and tell them a little bit more about yourself.
I'm Mike. I have been hunting for most of my life. Over the last 7 to 10 years, I've transitioned into primarily backpack hunting in the Rocky Mountain west of
Wow.
the United States. Very adventure type hunting, very self-reliant. Pack your food, pack all your own gear. Like what you have to survive with is what you can carry on your back. So my day job is in the military. I'm active duty. I'm an infantryman in the army. So living out of a backpack is kind of something I was already used to doing. There was just a few tweaks and changes that needed to be made to do it in the hunting world. And I think both of those careers or hobbies or passions or professions, whatever you want to call them, kind of they mesh together really well if you're able to kind of figure out the nuances of each. So
Yeah, for sure. I mean, those skills just stack on top of each other in such a great way when it comes to learning them. Okay, so
mhm.
we're going to start with talking to the beginners. So give me your top three tips for somebody who has never hunted before or has only like hunted one or two times.
So for beginners, hunting is a it is an intimidating endeavor. It is, where do you go? What kind of gear? Like it's its own world. It's its own industry, right? Um, and it is a lot to digest. So for beginners, I think the number one thing is to find a mentor, get involved in a community. Community is huge in the hunting space, especially in most of the hunting spaces. Really, there's a lot of organizations and programs and just people in your local community that are invested into getting new hunters into the sport, whether you're a young kid or a 35-year-old having a midlife crisis. Or we saw um, with COVID, there was a big uptick in people wanting to be more self-reliant. You had a lot of non-traditional type like the hunting community is generally kind of conservative. And you had a lot of left-leaning folks starting to take an interest in hunting because they were like, "Hey, I can't get food from the grocery store. How am I going to get food?" So that would be number one. Find a mentor, find a community, whether and the places you can go to kind of find that, your local archery shop. If you're getting into archery, that is a great place. Hunter safety course. When you take a hunter safety course, that's like step one to being legal to hunt. You can When you're in that hunter safety program, most states will have some sort of mentorship program or continuing education of some sort, whether that's animal breakdown or something like that. And then really just, I mean, if there's a Waffle House in your local area where, in November everybody's wearing orange and they're going there and strike up a conversation with some of those folks, buy them breakfast, strike up a conversation, let them know you're interested and kind of see where it goes. So number one will be find a mentor. I guess number two, like get into the community. And then I don't know if I have a good number three. I mean, those are the big ones. You need to
Okay.
you need to find a mentor and kind of get a foot in the door. That's the way that makes it the easiest,
Yep.
because then you got somebody kind of taking you under your wing. A hunter safety course is a really good starting point
Yeah.
with the
No.
local fishing game. That's step one to be even legal to go into the field and hunt. So that is a really good starting point to build off or build into all the other things I just talked about.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm sure during that hunter safety course, they probably give you a good packing list, depending on if you're, backpacking or you're planning to stay out in the field overnight and things like that. But I'm sure getting that list together, like what you take out there is all you have. So you need to make sure you don't take the kitchen sink, but you also need to make sure you take everything that you'll need: calories, water, safety, medical, things like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Hunter safety probably might not give you that much
Oh yeah.
information, but you'll find somebody there that's willing to give you that much information. And then the internet,
Yeah.
it's 2024 and we have the internet. There are podcasts, websites. I had a friend that ran a podcast for a long time. He just changed the name, but it was called Backcountry Rookies, right? And it
Okay.
was all about new hunters kind of getting into backpack hunting. So the resources on the internet are also endless.
Yeah.
And you can find a community there too. There's internet forums, uh, Facebook groups. There's all kinds of like the world is your oyster if
Yeah.
you're to so
So much when it comes to social media and Google and YouTube. But it's you need to really know that you're talking to somebody who's an expert, and you need to make sure that you're not just talking to somebody who's talking but not actually out in the field hunting. So definitely
yes,
follow.
that is a very good
Yeah,
point. There are plenty of people on the internet is a deceiving place. So
yeah, you
someone
can
can look
look
like a
cool
rock star on the internet and then not be a rock star in real life very
for sure.
easily.
Yeah. So make sure you pick somebody who has, a good community of people and actually is, follow born primitive outdoor. You guys are great when it comes to that, on social media and recommendations and all aspects of that. So make sure you follow a reliable source, and
Yes.
just somebody who looks pretty and has all the cool gear.
Yep. Vet your sources for sure.
Yep. Okay.
If Born
So
Primitive Outdoors working with them, they're
yeah,
probably legitimate.
yeah.
So
If they're vetted
they
by you
are
guys,
legitimate.
they're good to go.
Yep.
So what do you recommend for beginners preparing for their first hunting trip to ensure they're as safe as possible?
So as safe as possible would really don't bite off more than you can chew. I have helped a lot of new hunters, especially get into Western hunting. So if you're hunting in on the East Coast, it's not as intense, right? A whitetail hunt is is as easy as kind of understanding how to use a tree stand, the safety precautions that come along with that, and then practicing it a few times before you go into the field, and then kind of head into the field as long as you have all the other safety stuff, weapon safety, all that good stuff. In the Western hunting or the adventure hunting spaces, I always tell people not to bite off more than they can chew. Just because you see some of us doing these crazy, I just got back from or I did a mountain goat hunt last month. We were in the backcountry for 10 days.
Wow.
We took horses in. We were pretty far back there. Just because you see us doing it, that doesn't have to be your first hunt. And in a lot of cases, going that far back and doing all that crazy stuff isn't necessary to be successful. Um, so I would say hunt from the truck, start small. You do not have to go straight into a backpack hunt, right?
Yeah.
Start small, start easy, make a plan, hunt from your truck every day if you're coming out west, and then just have multiple areas you want to go in and check out. I like when I'm hunting out west because it's so much public land. I like to stay mobile and I like to stay near my truck. If I'm backpacking into an area, uh, it's a big risk because I might backpack back there and find three other guys back there hunting where I wanted to go. I just used all that time and energy to get back there. And now I have competition back there. Whereas if I'm hunting from my truck, I'm not using as much energy. I can drive. So, and then I also kind of have a little safety blanket. I can pack the kitchen sink in my truck.
Yeah.
So, I can run out of food and then get in my truck and drive to town. I can get completely soaked and get in my truck and turn on the heat. I don't have to have a ton of woodsmanship skills to survive. So that would be the big one for that. And then start small. If it's something like turkey hunting on the East Coast, turkey hunting I love taking new hunters turkey hunting. I try to take a new hunter turkey hunting every year if I can because it's low threat. There's a little bit of action because you're calling the turkeys and they're gobbling, and then you're hunting, you're getting out in the field, you're getting experience, you're learning how to move in the woods, be quiet, camouflage, all that stuff.
And there's probably a higher success rate for beginners, at least in the turkey hunting space, versus, sending a beginner out into the Western backpacking where
Yeah,
they don't know
yeah,
where they're going, and you don't want to spend 10 days and then not have a single kill to come back with. Like
yeah,
that's
yeah. And I mean, I've been I've been unsuccessful in the last probably 8 years on at least two or three of my archery elk hunts. Like success is not a given,
Oh yeah.
especially out here. It's difficult. And I definitely like to start hunters with a win.
Yeah.
So
And I would say you probably don't recommend beginners go out alone in any act.
yeah, I no. No, I mean if you feel like you have the skill, like I was kind of my first hunts were all do it myself and kind of on my own and I'm self-taught in a lot of it, especially out west.
Yeah.
Because I grew up in upstate New York, so I'd hunt deer out of a tree stand is what I knew.
Yep.
But I had the military training, the military medical training, all of that stuff to kind of fall back on. So
Yeah. You already had the firearms and first
yeah,
aid and stuff, and then you just had to learn the little bit of like being in the woods and probably more the animal aspect, how to hunt,
yeah.
how to know
Yep,
where they
animal
are.
behavior. Yep, know where they are, know what food they're eating, know how to with elk hunting, it's very calling intensive, so knowing how to call to them.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so that's beginners. So there's a lot of experienced hunters out there. Across the board, there are plenty of people who grew up hunting, and things like that. What are some common safety mistakes that you see even experienced hunters making?
I mean, there's my buddy Aaron. He's a pretty well-known hunter in the Western hunting industry. His name's Aaron Snyder, and he always says there's a difference between knowledge and wisdom, right? So anybody can sit here on the internet and read a book or read an internet forum, listen to a podcast. That's knowledge. You have
Yep.
that coming in. This is what I carry into the field. This is what I do if this happens. This is how I start a fire when it's raining, and this is where I go find dry wood, and these are the fire starters I use. And then there's wisdom, right? And that is actually putting that knowledge into action, years and years of actually putting knowledge to use, right? And that's where the wisdom comes in. So that's a big thing that he talks about. And it happens a lot even with experienced hunters. They make mistakes. I mean, hunting, especially adventure hunting, is very you have to be a risk-minded person, right? You have to constantly analyze the risk to your safety. That mountain goat hunt, I'll go back to that. My buddy Aaron is fearless. And
Yeah.
so he's hanging off from cliffs and doing all this crazy stuff. And we're wearing heavy backpacks. And I'm like, Aaron, I don't know why you're going over there. If there's a mountain goat over there, I'm not going over there because
Yeah.
I'm not going to risk my
Not
life to
worth
shoot a
that.
mountain goat. Yeah, not worth it, right? So you gotta know your limits and
Yep.
know you're only as like people ask me all the time what to put in a medical kit.
Yeah.
And there's 1,000 things I could tell them that they should take in a medical kit. But if you don't know how to use a tourniquet, if you do
Yeah.
not know how to apply a tourniquet, when to apply a tourniquet, how useful is that tourniquet going to be when you get out there and then somebody
Yeah.
gets a puncture wound in their leg, right? Does it need a tourniquet? Do you know how to apply the tourniquet? So
And you're
that's
both might not want it.
you're only as good as your training and
Yeah.
your knowledge and your
Yep.
wisdom. So
Yeah, and being out in those situations, like you don't have cell service, or you're not sure if you're gonna have cell service. It's not always gonna be there, so you can't just start Googling how to use a tourniquet. Especially
correct. You
high stress
can't look
situation.
it up.
Yeah,
You have
like
no idea how many times, not necessarily how to use a tourniquet, but when elk are just doing elk is I like calling elk. It's probably it is my favorite thing to do. Uh and there's been so many times out there where an elk just did something weird and I want to Google it, right? I want to go right
yeah,
to Google, be like, why did that bull do that when I made this sound, And you can't. And if, something breaks or something comes loose on your rifle, you can't look up, hey, what are the torque specs for this bolt on my
yep,
rifle?
yeah.
You're kind of out there on your own. That
Action's
would
not.
be another big one is communication. There's a ton of ways to have communication nowadays out there. iPhone just came out with the satellite texting. If you update to iOS 18, which is free for a couple of years, but it's not nearly as reliable as what is already on the market.
Yep,
Um, but there's a number of SOS devices and devices that allow you to send text back home to loved ones and things like that. So you have like the Garmin InReach where you can stay in touch. You just pay for a subscription plan that you can start and stop at any time. So you're not paying for the whole year. The one that I do is the unlimited plan during elk season. It's $60, but it gives me unlimited text. And then if something bad does happen, there's an SOS button on that sucker that I can hit to
yeah.
initiate some search and rescue assets.
Yeah, and I think the Garmin's or just any devices like that come in handy for even when natural disasters hit. We just saw a big one hit in the Carolinas and they didn't have cell service. So people who were able to have those satellite communications were just a little more prepared than, everybody else. So
Yeah.
if you're not a hunter or if you're not planning to do that now, I definitely think Garmin or some type of satellite communication device is necessity. And I think you should pay probably for a good one like Garmin. They are worth, I've heard from, tons of people, they are worth every penny. You don't want to buy the cheap Chinesium stuff because what if it fails when you're out there? What if it
Yep.
breaks? You get what you pay
Yep.
for. It's 2024.
It is 2020. Yeah, and I can attest to that. I've used or seen friends use multiples of the other ones. And I really like the one that I like is the Garmin InReach Mini 2 because we all have one of these now, right? We all have a cell phone. So and we everybody, myself included, fall victim to I don't have to know where anything is. I don't have to remember. I live in Colorado Springs, which is a pretty decent size, it's the second biggest city in Colorado, and I don't have to remember how to get anywhere. I can just pull up Google and it takes me right there. Well, if that cell phone fails in the backcountry and you don't have a map, then you at least with the Garmin InReach Mini 2, you have a backup GPS. So you have a way to navigate. Now it takes you got to put a little bit of time into learning how to use it, right?
Yep.
Because God forbid when
Totally.
you need it, you don't know how to use it, and then you can't Google how to use it and all that
Yeah.
stuff. But if you take the time, then you have at least two digital ways. Because technology, the one thing with tech is the only given with tech is it's going to fail at some point. Like it's just a matter of when, whether that's run out of batteries or just have a major glitch and stop working. It's gonna fail you at some point. It's just a
Yep.
matter of when. So
I always say
having
technology is great until it decides it doesn't want to work. And
Yeah,
then you're
exactly.
just SOL.
And sometimes you don't know when that's going to be. I mean,
Yep.
I could wake up in the morning and my phone just not work. So,
Yeah, I mean, we've seen that in the last, this whole year of 2024. There's been numerous times that cell towers have gone down and people are
mhm.
like, what do I do when my phone doesn't work? It's like, yeah, the grid is not as stable as we would like it to be all the time or that we think it's going to be. It's kind of a,
Yeah,
paradox. Paradox.
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so we just talked about safety and you talked about the Garmin. Is there anything else you would do when you approach accidents in remote areas that you kind of prepare for?
So for me, and again, the equipment that you carry into the field is only as good as the knowledge that you have in using it, right? So for me, I kind of carry mine is kind of Spartan because I'm in kind of a combat mindset, life, limb, or eyesight. We're not being shot at. Generally, there is always the risk of someone shooting you, a hunting accident. You guys just posted a reel about
Yep.
that the other day where a turkey hunter got hit with some bird shot, which is way less terror. That probably was just a pain in the ass for that guy more so than
Yeah.
a high power rifle. But I try to plan for like the most likely and most dangerous course of action. Do I have stuff? But there's a limit too because that's weight in my pack, right? And
Yep.
ounces equal pounds and pounds equal pain.
Yeah.
So I try to plan for mostly like for me, learn how to use a tourniquet and have a tourniquet with you at a minimum. Some sort of way to dress a wound. If you're backpack hunting fires, there's a chance of getting burnt, and so I always carry a petroleum gauze because I can all and I like to find things that are dual purpose. So with petroleum gauze, I can also use that to light a fire
Okay.
if
Yeah.
if I don't have a fire starter with me or I'm struggling to get a fire lit. Petroleum gauze will burn for 5 minutes or so, so it can help me get a fire started in an emergency, and that's always in my med kit and in my pack. So it's got a dual purpose. Have I ever used it for either of those yet? No,
Nope.
but it's so light that it's worth taking.
Yeah.
Um, and then really, I mean, again, you fall to your lowest level of training out there,
Yep.
and so a wilderness first aid class is a really worthwhile spend the money, go get your wilderness first aid certificate or even a first aid class if you're living in a city and that's not offered, like just knowing how to apply a tourniquet, when to apply a tourniquet. It's not rocket science, right? You see bright red squirting blood, you probably need to get a tourniquet on there fast.
Yeah.
So it's not super technical, but it helps to have that knowledge, helps to have a couple of reps applying a tourniquet, helps to have somebody that's actually applied a tourniquet to an injury,
Yep.
someone that was injured to explain to you that that person's probably, if they're still coherent and awake, they're probably going to beg you not to tighten the windlass.
Yep.
Like
And they're probably going to
they're
try to
gonna
loosen it because it's going to
yeah,
hurt for
they're
once.
gonna be, yeah. So that kind of stuff, just that's the little things you don't think about, and that's where the knowledge and wisdom comes in. I can Google how to apply a tourniquet, but if I don't have someone with knowledge of applying tourniquets to put it into practice, tell me that. I won't know that. My buddy's gonna say it hurts. I might back the windlass off one
Yeah.
twist, and he's slowly bleeding out from his femoral. So
Yep. No, and there's a story we share in training class. Somebody who had a tourniquet on, who was in the military, who understood, it was going to hurt more. He still, because of the pain, couldn't handle it and backed it off one turn and ended up bleeding out. And he knew
yeah,
it. And
he knew it.
it's just one of those things. It's like tourniquets hurt. Wound packing hurts.
Hurts.
Like it, but it's life saving. It's, do you want to survive and live? Like, no amount of
Mhm.
pain should overcome wanting to live and survive types of things. Okay.
1000%.
Yeah. So training, we talk about like instruction versus hands-on training. There's a big difference. You can watch a YouTube video, but actually having somebody who can check your pulse, who can tell you if it's on correctly, who can give you that hands-on training is way different than watching a YouTube video with instruction. And that's just what you were talking about. Knowledge,
1000%.
wisdom.
In person, hands-on training where you actually get reps
Yep.
and get the why versus this is how you do it. And
Yeah.
from the internet experts, the understanding the why, especially when it comes to medical equipment and first aid and survival is critical. If you
Yeah.
don't
And I
understand the
would say
why,
firearms is probably the same in that too.
yeah,
Like getting
absolutely.
instructions for firearms is probably not the only thing you should have hands-on experience with a trained person when it comes to learning firearms if you've never been around them. You should not
Yeah.
be like, I watched a YouTube video and now I'm going to go hunting, you know.
Yep.
Not
Yep.
how don't think you can do that by any means. So you guys have been, hunting, obviously. There's probably been some high stress situations. Are there any tips you can give people for staying calm and composed during those high stress situations in the field?
Um, I mean, that's really going to come down to your experience level, and
Okay.
most people will, with the right training and the right knowledge, will keep themselves out of those high stress situations. For me, I've been in a lot of high stress situations. I've been shot at
Yeah.
overseas. I've done a lot of things, and I can honestly say this mountain goat hunt, I'll refer back to that because it was recent, was one of the higher stress situations. There's numerous times on like steep rock outcroppings where you can just lock up, like you lock up with fear. There's no, I'm not afraid of heights. I jumped out of airplanes for a living for a period of my life. But up in those cliffs and
Yeah.
looking at those steep slopes, it was just like, all right. So just being able to talk yourself through it, or like you can't lock up. If you lock up, it's
Yeah.
hard to come back from that. So you have to figure out a way to regulate your nervous system, calm yourself down, and look for the next safe spot to go, and just kind
Mental
of keep going.
toughness. Mental
Yeah.
toughness is a whole nother world when it comes to
Whole
hunting.
nother world, but
Like,
it's critical out there for sure. And not just yeah, I mean you can be mentally tough, but then you can also find yourself in trouble out there too. So you have to have the right amount of mental toughness, and then common sense, which is becoming so rare. It's a superpower nowadays,
not
but
common. Yep.
yeah,
And you
it's
you can't
uncommon
teach it.
sense.
Like
You
common sense
can't.
is not something you can teach. It's not a skill. It's just you got it or you don't. And it sucks that not a lot of people seem to have it anymore.
Yeah. But those are kind of the big ones. And then again, not biting off more than you can chew.
Sure.
It's kind of the opposite of getting in cold. When you get in really cold water, like an ice bath or something, it's easier if you just dive straight in.
Yep.
But this is kind of dip your toes in first and then kind of slowly starts, just like learning how to swim, right? You're not going straight to the deep end. And that's kind of what I would equate getting into hunting to. Find a good mentor, don't jump straight into the deep end by yourself unless there's plenty of cases where guys have the knowledge and experience at least to be safe in the field,
Yeah.
right? Plenty of cases, like I'm a good example of that case, military background, living out of packs, and the knowledge and experience to be safe in the field, the knowledge and experience I need to gain is from being in the field and interacting with the animals, or
Yeah.
seeing how animals interact and understanding their behavior. So it's not cookie cutter for everybody, but
Yeah, for sure. So I'm gonna end with this. Do you have a good book recommendation for the category of hunting? Not necessarily if it has to be hunting safety, but our group loves to read. Our community is big avid on reading, so you got a good one for us?
um, it's not going to teach you a ton about hunting. I just looked. I got some books
That's
over
fine.
here. It's not going to teach you a ton about hunting, but it's called One Man's Wilderness.
Okay.
So it's a story of a guy who's a Navy veteran. He got out of the Navy uh, and moved to Alaska, got flown into this remote lake, and just made it work and lived life. So it's his diary. He kept it's essentially his diary. A writer got it and kind of put his diary together after he passed away, but this man, like how resourceful he was, the way he started to understand the animals on the landscape after living out there, and the seasons and the weather, and kind of understanding how all of that stuff's interconnected. It's a really cool book.
So it's
So
full of wisdom, is what it
it is
sounds like.
full of wisdom. It's called
Yeah.
One Man's Wilderness, and it was hard earned was wisdom by that man. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Okay. That's awesome. So let the viewers who have been watching this podcast, let them know where they can find you and Born Primitive.
You can find me at Mike_Herne on Instagram, and then Born Primitive is Born Primitive Outdoor for the outdoor. We got Born Primitive, we have Born Primitive Outdoor, and then we also have Born Primitive Tactical.
Yeah, you guys are exploding in all of the different fields. You guys are great, followers and friends of ours and just really experienced in all the fields. We really leaned into you guys when it comes to hunting, and things like that. So we really appreciate you coming on and spending time with us and giving our viewers and followers, the tips to going into hunting, especially at this crazy world. We need to be able to know how to get food
Absolutely.
because we can't survive without food. So
Nope.
we appreciate you.
Thank you.